The evening was dark, and the sky was filled with heavy clouds. Rain was falling slowly, making the road wet and shining under the dim streetlights. Aisha was driving home after a long and tiring day at work. Her eyes were heavy, and her heart was restless. She wanted to reach home as soon as possible and rest. The road was quiet, almost empty, with only the sound of rain and the occasional car passing by. She felt a little lonely, but she tried to focus on driving. Suddenly, she heard a strange sound. The car shook, and within seconds, it stopped at the side of the road. Her heart sank. She opened the door and stepped out into the rain, holding her umbrella tightly. Her eyes widened when she saw the problem. The tire was broken, completely flat. She stood there, staring at it, not knowing what to do. She had never changed a tire before, and the thought of being alone on this dark road made her nervous. Aisha pulled out her phone, but her screen showed no signal. Her hands trembled a little as she held the phone higher, hoping to catch even a single bar, but there was nothing. The sound of raindrops grew louder, and the road seemed even more empty. For a moment, she felt a wave of fear. What if no one came? What if she had to spend the night here? She tried to calm herself and told herself to stay strong. Minutes passed, and then she noticed a dim light approaching from a distance. A vehicle was coming closer. Her heart started beating faster. She could not tell if she should feel scared or relieved. In the silence of the rainy night, the sound of an engine grew louder. A motorbike stopped near her car, and the rider removed his helmet. He looked around 30 years old, tall, with tired eyes but a calm face. The man gave a small smile and said, "It seems you need help." Aisha hesitated for a moment. She was not sure if she could trust a stranger on such a lonely road, but she had no other choice. She nodded slowly. The man introduced himself as Saad. His voice was soft, but there was something in his tone that showed he had lived through many struggles. His clothes were wet from the rain, and his hands looked rough, like someone who worked very hard. Without asking many questions, Saad took out a small toolkit from his bike and started checking the tire. Aisha stood silently, watching him. The rain continued to fall, and the two of them seemed like strangers connected by fate. She noticed how carefully he worked, even though the rain made everything more difficult. His hands moved with patience, and his face showed quiet determination. While fixing the tire, Saad's hand slipped, and his finger got a small cut. A drop of blood mixed with the rain. Aisha quickly searched her bag and handed him a tissue. Their eyes met for a brief moment. In that second, something unspoken passed between them. It was not love, not yet, but it was a strange feeling of connection. Saad gave her a small smile and whispered, "Thank you." There was something heavy in his voice, as if he carried hidden pain inside him. Aisha felt her heart soften. She had never met him before, but she could sense that he was not an ordinary man. After some time, Saad finally fixed the tire. He stood up, tired but satisfied, and said, "Your car is ready now." Aisha felt relieved. She looked at him and asked, "How much should I pay you?" She wanted to thank him properly for helping her in such a difficult moment. Saad looked at her with surprise, then shook his head. "Not everything is about money," he replied in a quiet voice. His words touched her heart deeply. In today's world, where almost everything had a price, his answer felt different, almost rare. Before she could say anything more, Saad picked up his helmet. He seemed ready to leave, but then he stopped for a moment. He glanced at the dark road ahead and said softly, "This road is dangerous. Drive carefully." With that, he started his bike. The sound of his motorbike faded slowly into the rain, leaving Aisha standing there in silence. She sat back inside her car, but she could not start driving right away. Something about Saad stayed in her mind. His kindness, his silence, and the sadness in his eyes made her curious. She wanted to know more about him, but the night swallowed him like a mystery. Finally, she drove away, but her thoughts were not clear. She replayed his words in her mind, "Not everything is about money." She kept wondering who he was, why he had helped her, and why she felt such a strange pull towards him. That night, when she lay in her bed, the sound of rain still echoed in her ears. She remembered his face, his voice, and the way he had fixed the tire with such patience. She felt safe because of him, yet also confused. She did not realize it yet, but something new had started in her life. A story she had never imagined was about to unfold. The broken tire was not just a problem. It was the beginning of a journey, the start of something unexpected. Aisha closed her eyes, not knowing that this small moment on a rainy road would change her life forever. The next morning, Aisha woke up late. The sound of rain was still in her ears, and the memory of last night kept returning again and again. She sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. It was strange how a stranger could leave such a deep impression on her. She had met Saad only once, and for just a few minutes, but she could not forget his voice or the sadness in his eyes. She shook her head, telling herself that she was being silly. People come and go. Not every meeting is meant to continue. Still, her heart did not listen. At work, she was distracted. Her colleagues noticed she was not her usual self. While others laughed and talked during lunch, Aisha quietly looked out the window. She remembered Saad's words again, "Not everything is about money." Such a simple sentence, but so powerful. She wondered what kind of man he was. What pain had he seen in his life that made him speak like that? That evening, on her way home, Aisha passed by the same road where her car had broken down. She slowed down her car, looking around as if expecting to see him again. But the road was empty. Only the tall trees, the wet ground, and the fading sound of the city were around her. She sighed and drove away. Days passed. Aisha tried to forget Saad, but fate had something else planned. One weekend, she went to a small cafe near the market. She often came here to relax and read books. That day, as she sat with a cup of tea, she saw someone familiar at the corner table. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Saad. He was sitting alone, wearing the same tired expression. A small notebook lay open in front of him, and he was writing something. Aisha hesitated. Should she approach him? Or should she pretend she did not see him? Her heart was telling her to go, while her mind warned her to stay away. After a moment of struggle, she stood up and slowly walked to his table. "Excuse me," she said softly. Saad looked up, surprised. For a moment, his eyes widened, then softened with recognition. "You," he said quietly. "The girl from the rainy night." Aisha smiled nervously. "Yes. I just wanted to thank you again. You helped me when I was completely lost." Saad gave a small smile, but it did not reach his eyes. "It was nothing," he replied. There was an awkward silence. Aisha wanted to leave, but something inside pushed her to stay. She asked, "Do you mind if I sit here?" Saad nodded slowly. As they sat together, Aisha tried to start a conversation. She asked him about his life, his work, and his family. But Saad did not say much. He kept his answers short, almost as if he was hiding something. Yet, in his silence, there was depth. He was not cold, but he carried a heaviness that Aisha could not ignore. Finally, she asked gently, "Why do you always look so sad?" Saad froze. For a moment, he did not answer. Then he closed his notebook and looked away. "Everyone has their own battles," he whispered. "Some are visible, some are not." Aisha felt her heart ache. She wanted to ask more, but she knew it was not the right time. Still, she sensed that Saad's life had been difficult. There was pain in him, but also kindness. She felt drawn to him in a way she could not explain. They sat quietly for a while. The cafe was warm, filled with the smell of coffee and the soft sound of music. Aisha thought it was strange how comfortable she felt sitting with a man she barely knew. There was no fear, no hesitation. Instead, there was a quiet bond that words could not describe. When she finally stood up to leave, she said, "I hope we meet again." Saad looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Maybe we will," he said softly. That night, as Aisha walked home, she felt a strange happiness. She did not know why, but she wanted to see him again. She wanted to understand his silence, to uncover the mystery behind his sad eyes. On the other side, Saad sat in the cafe alone. He opened his notebook again and wrote a few lines. His handwriting was shaky, but his words were full of pain. He wrote about loss, about dreams that had broken, about people he had loved and lost. He wrote because writing was the only way to release the heaviness in his heart. But for the first time in many years, something felt different. He thought about the girl with the gentle smile, the girl who had looked at him not with pity, but with curiosity and care. He wondered why fate had crossed their paths again. Maybe life was giving him a chance. Both of them went to bed that night with questions in their hearts. Neither of them knew where this connection would lead. But deep inside, both felt that something was beginning. Something neither of them had planned, yet something neither of them could stop. The broken tire was no longer just a memory. It was slowly turning into a bridge between two strangers. Aisha could not explain it, and Saad could not escape it. Their story was unfolding, step by step, like the slow rhythm of rain. Days turned into weeks. Aisha kept visiting the same cafe more often than before. Sometimes she told herself it was just for the tea, sometimes for the books. But deep inside, she knew the real reason. She hoped to see Saad again. And soon, her wish was granted. One Saturday afternoon, she walked into the cafe and found him sitting at the same corner table, with his notebook open. This time, his face seemed even more tired, as if the weight of life had grown heavier on his shoulders. Aisha smiled and approached him. "May I sit here again?" she asked. Saad looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. After a short pause, he nodded. "Of course." As they sat together, the silence between them was calmer than before. Aisha tried to start conversations, and slowly Saad opened up, little by little. He told her he worked as a mechanic in a small workshop at the edge of the city. His days were long, and his nights were quiet. He did not complain, but his tone showed that life had not been kind to him. Aisha listened carefully. She asked questions not out of curiosity, but out of genuine care. Saad noticed it. He was not used to people listening to him without judgment, without rushing. There was something different about her presence. One evening, after they shared tea together, Aisha asked softly, "Why do you write in that notebook all the time?" Saad looked at her for a long moment, then gently pushed the notebook toward her. "Because some things are too heavy to say," he replied. She slowly opened the notebook. Inside, she found page after page filled with words. They were not stories, not poems, but fragments of his heart. Lines about pain, about missing someone, about loneliness. Words like, "The world keeps moving, but I stand still. Everyone leaves, everything breaks, and yet I survive." Aisha's chest tightened as she read. She looked at him with soft eyes. "You've suffered a lot," she whispered. Saad gave a faint smile. "Everyone suffers. Mine is just written on paper." That night, when Aisha went home, she could not sleep. She thought about him again and again. She felt his sadness, as if it had touched her soul. She wanted to help him, to bring light into his dark world. But at the same time, a small fear entered her heart. What if she was walking into something she could not handle? The next few days, their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes at the cafe, sometimes near the workshop where Saad worked. Aisha brought food for him once, and he hesitated before accepting it. His pride did not allow him to take favors easily, but her sincerity was impossible to refuse. Slowly, Saad started to laugh again. It was rare, but when he did, Aisha felt a warmth inside her chest. She realized she wanted to see him smile more often. She wanted to take away the sadness that lived in his eyes. But just as things seemed to brighten, one evening something unexpected happened. Aisha was walking near the market when she saw Saad from a distance. He was not alone. He was standing with a little boy, around 6 years old. The child looked tired and weak, holding Saad's hand tightly. Saad was gently fixing the boy's jacket, making sure he was warm. Aisha froze. She had never seen this boy before. Questions filled her mind. Was he Saad's son? Why had he never mentioned him? Why did the boy look so pale, as if he was sick? She stood there quietly, hidden behind a wall, watching. Saad lifted the boy into his arms and carried him toward the workshop. His face was full of care, full of love. Aisha's heart beat fast. She wanted to go to him, to ask about the child. But something stopped her. She felt it was not the right moment. She turned away and walked home, her mind restless. That night, she could not sleep again. If Saad had a son, why had he never told her? What was the story behind that little boy? Was this the reason behind his sadness? The next time they met, Aisha tried to act normal. But Saad noticed her uneasiness. He asked, "Something is troubling you. What is it?" She looked into his eyes and finally said, "I saw you with a boy. Who is he?" For the first time, Saad's calm face broke. His expression changed, and his eyes darkened. He stayed silent for a long moment, then whispered, "He is my son." Aisha felt a shock inside. She had not expected this. Her lips parted, but no words came. Saad continued softly, "He is sick. Very sick. I don't talk about him because it hurts too much." Aisha's heart ached. She understood now. The sadness in his eyes, the heaviness in his voice, the words in his notebook, everything was connected to this little boy. Saad looked down, as if ashamed. "I don't want anyone to see my weakness. I don't want pity. That's why I stay silent." But Aisha reached out and touched his hand gently. "It's not weakness," she whispered. "It's love." At that moment, Saad looked at her with eyes full of pain and gratitude. A wall inside him had cracked, and Aisha knew their connection had just grown deeper. But she also knew this was only the beginning. The boy's shadow now stood between them, a mystery full of sorrow. And she wondered if she was strong enough to face it. The next few days were heavy for Aisha. The image of the small boy holding Saad's hand would not leave her mind. She could still see the child's pale face and tired eyes. At work, she kept thinking about him. At night, she dreamed about him. Who was he really? How long had Saad been carrying this burden alone? Finally, one evening, she gathered the courage to ask Saad again. They were sitting on a bench outside the cafe, the air cool and calm. Aisha spoke softly, "Tell me about your son." Saad lowered his head. For a long time, he said nothing. His fingers tapped nervously on his notebook. Then, in a quiet voice, he began. "His name is Hamza," he said. "He is 6 years old. His mother, she is gone. It has only been me and him since then." Aisha listened, her heart beating faster. Saad continued, his voice heavy. "Hamza was born weak. At first, the doctors said he would be fine with care, but when he turned 4, everything changed. He got sick often, and the medicines were expensive. I sold what little I had to keep him alive. The workshop barely gives me enough money, but I try. Every day I fear losing him, but every day I fight for him. He is all I have." As he spoke, his voice broke. Aisha could see the pain he carried, the exhaustion in his soul. She felt her eyes fill with tears, but she held them back. She wanted to be strong for him. "Why didn't you tell me before?" she asked gently. Saad sighed. "Because people leave when they see struggle. No one wants to share someone else's pain. I did not want you to feel sorry for me. I don't want pity, I just want my son to live." Aisha reached out and placed her hand on his. "It's not pity, Saad. It's care. Sometimes you have to let people in. Sometimes you have to share the weight." Saad looked at her silently. For the first time, he did not pull away. For the first time, he allowed someone to stand beside him. The next day, Aisha insisted on meeting Hamza. At first, Saad refused, but eventually he agreed. She went to their small house near the workshop. The walls were old, the furniture was simple, but it was filled with warmth. Hamza sat on the bed, a thin blanket around him. His face lit up when he saw Aisha. "Papa, is she your friend?" the boy asked with innocent curiosity. Saad smiled softly. "Yes, Hamza. She is my friend." Hamza's smile widened. "Then she is my friend too." Aisha's heart melted. She sat beside him, gently talking to him. He was bright, cheerful, and full of questions, despite his weak body. She felt an instant connection with him, as if she had known him for years. Over the following weeks, Aisha visited them often. She brought food, medicine, and sometimes toys for Hamza. At first, Saad tried to stop her, saying he could not accept so much help. But Aisha reminded him, "This is not charity. This is friendship." Slowly, Saad gave in. Together, They began to share small moments of happiness. Aisha would sit with Hamza, telling him stories, while Saad worked nearby. Sometimes, all three would share tea and laugh at Hamza's innocent jokes. For a while, the heaviness in Saad's heart seemed lighter. But happiness never stayed long. One night, Hamza fell seriously ill. His breathing grew heavy, and his small hands trembled. Saad panicked, rushing him to the nearest hospital. Aisha, who had been at home, received his call and hurried there too. In the hospital corridor, Saad paced back and forth, his face pale with fear. When Aisha arrived, she placed a hand on his shoulder. "He will be okay," she whispered, though her own heart trembled. The doctor came out after some time, his expression serious. "The boy's condition is weak. He needs regular treatment, proper nutrition, and a stable environment. Without that, things will get worse." Saad felt his knees weaken. He sat down, covering his face with his hands. Aisha knelt beside him. "We will find a way," she said firmly. "You are not alone anymore." But Saad shook his head. "You don't understand. The treatments cost more than I can ever earn. Even if I work day and night, I cannot save him. I am failing him, Aisha. I am losing my son." Tears rolled down his cheeks, and for the first time, Aisha saw him completely broken. Her heart shattered, but she did not let go of his hand. "Listen to me, Saad," she said strongly. "We will fight together. I don't know how yet, but we will. Maybe fate brought us together for this reason. You saved me that night on the road, now let me save you." Saad looked at her, stunned. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. For years, he had carried the burden alone, but now here was someone willing to share it, willing to fight with him. In that moment, something changed. A crack of light entered Saad's dark world. And though the future was still uncertain, for the first time he felt a small spark of hope. The days after Hamza's hospital stay were heavy but also different. For the first time in years, Saad was not carrying the weight alone. Aisha visited every day, bringing medicines, food, and sometimes just her presence. She became a part of their little world, and slowly, the house that once felt filled only with sadness began to feel alive again. Hamza adored her. He would wait near the window for her arrival, smiling the moment she entered. "Papa, she's here," he would shout with joy. His weak body seemed stronger whenever she was around. Aisha read him stories, helped him with drawings, and sometimes sang softly until he fell asleep. Saad watched quietly. Every smile on Hamza's face was a blessing, and every laugh was a gift. But deep inside, fear still lived. He knew Hamza's condition was serious, and no amount of laughter could hide that truth. One evening, Aisha sat with Saad after Hamza had fallen asleep. The lamp cast a soft glow across the room. "We need to do something more," she said firmly. The doctor was clear. Without regular treatment, Hamza's condition will only worsen. Saad lowered his eyes. "I don't have the money, Aisha. No workshop, no job can pay for all that." "Then we'll find another way," she replied. "There are charities, organizations, even campaigns that help children like Hamza. Let me try." Saad shook his head. "I don't want him to be a story for strangers. I don't want his life to be treated like a pity case." Aisha placed her hand on his. "It's not pity. It's hope. Sometimes you have to open the door and let others help. Just like you opened the door for me that night on the road." Her words touched him deeply. He had never trusted easily, never leaned on anyone. But now, sitting beside her, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt faith. In the following weeks, Aisha worked tirelessly. She spoke to doctors, searched for support programs, and even organized a small charity event with her colleagues. To her surprise, people responded. Donations came in, some small, some large, but together they began to form enough for Hamza's treatments. When Saad saw the collected money, his eyes filled with tears. He looked at Aisha as if he was seeing her for the first time. "Why are you doing all this for us?" he whispered. Aisha smiled softly. "Because sometimes life gives you a second chance. You gave me one that rainy night. Now it's my turn." Their bond grew stronger. What had started with a broken tire had turned into something neither of them had expected: love, not born from dreams, but from shared pain and shared hope. But fate still had its tests. One winter night, Hamza's condition suddenly worsened. His breathing became shallow, his face pale. Saad rushed him to the hospital, Aisha by his side. In the waiting room, Saad sat with his head in his hands, trembling. "I can't lose him," he muttered again and again. Aisha held his hand tightly. "You won't. He's stronger than you think." The doctors worked for hours. Finally, one came out and said, "He is stable now, but we must continue his treatments carefully. He is a fighter, but he needs time and care." Relief washed over them. Saad broke down, tears streaming down his face. Aisha hugged him, whispering, "See? He's not giving up, and neither should you." That night, as Hamza lay sleeping in the hospital bed, Saad and Aisha stood by the window. The city lights twinkled outside, the same city that once felt so cruel but now felt a little kinder. Saad looked at her, his voice low but firm. "I never believed in miracles. But meeting you, it feels like one." Aisha smiled, her eyes shining. "Maybe miracles don't come in grand ways. Sometimes they come quietly, like rain on a lonely road, or a stranger fixing a broken tire." He reached for her hand, holding it gently but firmly. For the first time in years, his heart felt lighter. The pain was still there, the struggle still real, but now there was love, hope, and someone to share the journey with. Months passed. Hamza's health improved slowly, step by step. The treatments continued, and though the road ahead was still long, it was no longer hopeless. Aisha became part of their family, not by blood, but by choice. One sunny afternoon, Hamza ran across the small garden outside the hospital, his laughter filling the air. Saad and Aisha stood side by side, watching him. Saad whispered, "I thought my life was over. But somehow, life gave me a reason to keep going." Aisha looked at him, her smile soft and full of meaning. Sometimes, love finds us in the most unexpected places. And as Hamza laughed under the clear sky, Saad realized the truth. The broken tire on that rainy night was never just an accident. It was the beginning of a new story, the beginning of unexpected love.